So today we're going to try this Python set no idea practice question. So the problem is as follows. There's an array of n integers and two disjoint sets A and B, each containing m integers. You like all the integers in set A and dislike all the integers in set B. Your initial happiness is 0, and for each integer I in the array, if I is part of set A, then you add 1 to your happiness, and if I is part of set B, you subtract 1 from your happiness. Otherwise, your happiness does not change, and then you finally output your final happiness. So the constraints are your integer array is going to be less than 10 to the 5 elements. Your set is also going to be the same restriction, and your integer can be anywhere between 1 and 10 to the 9. So the first line input is going to be n and m separated by space, and that's going to tell you the first one is integer n, which is the size of your array, and then the second m is going to be the size of each of your sets, and then the second line is going to be your integer array, and the third and fourth are going to be your sets respectively. And so here you can see that for this sample input, we get this sample output. So this question, we're going to start by defining a function, and we're going to call it happiness score. Let's just call it score, and we're going to do input array, and that's our n array. We're going to do positive set and negative set. And these are going to be our inputs for this array. And so for the moment, let's just start with score is equal to 0, as was mentioned in the question, and then we're going to return score at the end. So we're just going to leave that alone for the minute, and then we're going to also take our inputs. So basically here we're going to have input, and then we're going to make that a string. So we want string of that input dot split. So we're going to split that by an empty space, and that is going to basically be our n and our m. And then we're going to have our input array is going to be a list of, and then we're going to do very similar code here, and it's going to be list of our array there, and then we're going to do our positive set is going to be set of the same thing, and this is important because set is going to be stored as a hash map under the hood, and we're going to enable us to do very fast lookups, which you'll see later. So we have positive set, negative set, and we have our input array, so we should be good to go. So now we're just going to do print of we do of score, and then we do input array, we do positive set, and we do negative set. This is going to allow us to feed all of our inputs into our function above here. So now we do for value in our input array. So we're going to loop over the input array. So read inputs. So it's important to document your code. So for each element in that array that we're feeding, if the value is in the positive set, then we do score plus equals 1, and likewise if the value is in negative set, we want to subtract 1, and there's no other conditions. So if in positive, score increases, and then if negative score decreases. And this is basically because you can have a value, for example, let's say your first element in your input array is 1. 1 can show up in both the positive and the negative set, which would basically negate. So the +1 and the -1 would add and subtract, so your net result would be 0. So it's important to do this check in both sets to make sure that you're getting the correct output. So we're going to go ahead and run this code. And immediately we have a misspelling. So we're just going to double check that we spelled everything correctly. It looks like we did not. So let's run this again. And as you can see, our output is 2. And so that was run on one test sample. Let's also delete this test case. So let's run code. This is just going to run on one sample input. It's going to take a minute. And as you can see, we've now run all the test cases. It takes a little bit of time depending on your machine, depending on your internet connection. So as you can see, our code that we have here has run successfully, and our output is as expected. There's multiple other test cases where they check various sizes of input array, various sizes of sets. But just to walk you through the code again, the reason we converted the positive and the negative set to a set instead of just a list is because a set is stored as a hash map value, and when you do a search, for example, when we check if the value is in the positive or the negative set, our search times are big O notation of 1, meaning on average it'll take big O notation of 1 to execute that search, and that's actually very fast. And when we're looping over the course of the input array, which may be very large, and the positive set again may be very large, we want to make sure we don't introduce quadratic or even worse runtimes. And so there's nothing really we can do in terms of the input array, because we need to make sure that we loop over every input array element, so we can't do any other optimizations here. So at this point, we've satisfied both the HackERRANK test cases and also their performance testing that they do for various cases. So we're going to go ahead and finish this particular question. If you have any questions or any comments in the feedback for maybe better methods, or if you have any questions of how this was done, feel free to leave those below. Thank you.